What is up, guys? It's Metro Deity, and today I want to go over all of my hunt teams and a few more things. So this is technically an episode of the guide, but normally I always end the guide series around the time you're getting into RTA. But this one I want to show like a little bit of the progression past that. So I'll go ahead and go over hunt teams. The next episode will be going over your raid teams. I am trying to get all the raid teams set up. And then from there, I'll do like a little account overview, and then the guide series is done. The reason I always end once we get to a certain point is because your accounts are stabilized, and it's time for you to go in and start trying to figure out how to beat things yourself using other guides, using the characters, because the biggest thing is we all will have different characters by this point. But during the beginning of the game, we all will have around the same thing, and we can all use the same thing to beat it, and that's what I try to guide you through, is having that same least amount of characters built up, so then you can start building up all the stuff that you want to, and we're to that point. So hopefully you guys that did follow along are already to the point where you're starting to experiment and try things on your own. So with the different hunt teams, we'll just go in. I'll show each different type, and I'm also going to give you your final expedition teams. Obviously, again, you'll be able to go in and experiment and do other things besides what I have shown here. But let's just go ahead and go to the hunt teams first, and then I'll do expedition teams. So first off, let's just, our normal wyvern team, I'll show all the stats on these right after this. So our normal hunt team stays the same. Wyvern is always just immediate. We'll go and do it. Next up, we have our Katie's 13 team. This is why I had you grab Rowana. So Rowana, Breek, Tamarin, and our Sermia. Okay, and then from there, our Golem team is also utilizing Sermia as well as Camilla. So Camilla, I wanted you guys to grab because she's using all of our expedition teams, and you'll just end up using the exact same thing here. Again, we try to use the least amount of characters. Yes, you could go ahead and start trying to build more defined and higher win rate teams, but these are all teams that do beat these hunts. So if you're on your heroes path missions and need a specific team, these are hopefully ones that you can just throw together to at least clear that until, if you even want to build one of those. No, I am not going to be covering Rift in this guide. I think going into Rift is a big mistake for players. Currently, we're going to be getting a new Rift cycle, so yes, even if you do have Wukong, the character, I highly suggest not doing it yet. Just farm Wyvern and get your account stabilized, and then during the next Rift cycle, that's when you'll get into Rift. Next up, we have our A13 team. So this is a super safe A13 team, or if you have any other kind of character that does multi-target hits. So Arya could be used here. Wukong with the skills off could be used here. Any kind of character that does either double hit or AoE attack could be used in the spot. Bloodblade Curran would be great because she'd have to skill 3. But anything that you want, there, I just have this. It's a super, super slow clear, but it will always clear it. That's the nice thing with this team. But just depending on the characters you have Lone Crescent Bologna, you have Arbiter Vildred. You can use Spectre Sneeber here. Just the issue is if you land too many of your poisons, if you put 3 debuffs on the boss of A13, then it is going to be counterattacking you and full cleansing. So your idea is to try to get non-debuffing characters in this, so that's why Wukong would be a great option that you could just throw in here and it works. Next up, we have our Banshee team. Banshee team is going to vary very big between people. So this is a use case for Assyria. You could do Wukong. Vivian is pretty universal. We'll all have her. You could just put her at level 50 and she will beat it. But from here, these two characters can be switched out to whatever you would like. Just another grass damage dealer. Try to make your whole team grass. If anything, you could probably even use Celine here. You could use Midnight Galililius here. Any green damage dealer would be okay. Euphine would work in the spot if you'd like to. Just if you have anything that you want to use, Green Vildred would be great. You could probably even use Sid. He's a little squishy, but any damage dealer there. And then you want some kind of defense break, so you could either do Loka, which we are going to be building Loka for our expedition teams, but we're going to need Assyria anyway too. And yes, you can do a bunch of different variations, but the idea is Destina has a lot of effect res, and it will just make the run super, super consistent. So that is like my go-to for new players getting into Banshee, but this team is very, very slow. You can always go and do the research of how to build a Banshee one-shot team. They're pretty simple, just depending on if you have the characters are not needed for, but there's like 90 different Banshee one-shots you could do. Same with Wyvern. There's a bunch of Wyvern one-shots you could do if you would like to go in and look at that. But these are the overall teams. So that is, I'll go over them again. We have our Wyvern team. We have our Katie's team. We have our Golem team. We have our Azamakalis. I don't know which A this is, but it's the one that drops Rage Gear and Immunity Gear. And then we have our Banshee. Okay, so these are all of our teams, and then I'm going to go ahead and show the other teams, and I'll do a quick overview of our stats. So with this, I've already shown you guys our expedition team. So going in, you can go to see the team. Now we have our fire team. Super simple Camilla plus Brig. Brig Tamarin is just the core of every single PvE thing, basically. Next up, we have our water team. This is where Lilka comes in. If you have a green Bologna could have been used on Banshee as well. It just depends on who you have and who you want to use. But the biggest thing is the core of these three, Lilka, Tamarin, and also, if you do have another Soul Weaver here, you could use it instead of Tamarin. So if you want to, go ahead and slot Destina in. If your Tamarin is dying, you could do this and it would work fine. But the biggest thing is you want to have Loka, the 3-star, which I'll explain while we're going over stats. And then any grass damage dealer works here. Green Vildred, you could do Wukong. Again, Galililius is great. Any Vivian would work here if you want to just reutilize your Vivian if she's already got gear on. Zaha could work, Yufine, any Sid would work. Any of the green general core damage dealers would be fine on this team. Okay, so that is just the easy water team. Next up, and that will be probably coming into rotation at the end of this month. Next up, we have our grass. It's just Mercedes Camilla. You could use Arbiter Vildred here. You just need any character that does multi-target hits. So Bomb Model Kana. Wukong, again, you can turn his skills off. He could be okay here. He wouldn't be great because Camilla, the idea is you want the skill 1 to have a multi-target hit. So our Arbiter Vildred, Green Vildred, Fire Mercedes, all great characters for the slot, but you just want your dual attack skill 1 to be multi-target, because if you single target, you do no damage to this boss. So keep that in mind. You want your main core damage that are multi-hitting. Now the Light Expedition, this one is just you pick any character that gives himself a self buff. So Galililius would be great, Sermia is great, Camilla dual attacks, that's pretty solid, and she gives herself a self buff. And then you have whatever damage dealers you want. The biggest thing is just Brig front tank, and then you don't bring a healer because your characters heal themselves during this as long as they're doing damage. And if they don't have a buff on them, you take more damage. So you want to have all self-buffing damage dealers. You can just experiment with different, whatever your best damage dealers on your account are, just experiment and see what you can do with it. One of the really good, probably best characters for this is going to be Zealot Carmen Rose. So this is a specialty change that you could go do. So Carmen Rose right here, she's like designed for Light Expedition, fantastic for it. But otherwise, it's super easy. Your goal is to only get like 250,000 points on auto. If you get higher than that, it's just bonus. So you don't have to go crazy on your expo teams. The only time you go crazy on expo teams is there's challenges that when you beat them the first time, you get some extra rewards for it, which I can show those too. And then this is the Dark Expo team. We use Sermia on this as well. So that's one of the reasons I had you guys go ahead and commit to Sermia, is because she's used on 2 hunt teams and this, and you can use her in the Light Expo. So that's a lot of different use cases, and we'll probably use her in a few other things too going forward. So that is all of the different teams. If you guys need to pause or come back to the video at any point, you can go ahead and do that. But now I'm going to go ahead and go over the gear on these characters. And I've already tested all this. All of it beats everything. Sometimes some of the hunt teams obviously are going to fail. I mean, even the Wyvern team fails because it's just there's RNG in the game. So it is what it is. Right here, we'll just go in. First thing is this Wukong build is mostly on my, you don't have to go lifesteal, but the biggest thing is just look at the overall stats of the character. This is more for, I was trying to use them in RTA just for fun. We've still been streaming on this account, doing different days where we play RTA on it. So that was the idea, is having that. Then our Celine, if you want to use her, you could for, say, Banshee. Galililius, I was not able to build on this account yet, but our Destina, the idea with her was to get more effect res for if we're going to use her in Banshee. If you aren't going to use her in Banshee, then you would just build her, you could build her a little less effect res, more bulk. And then from there, let's go ahead down and show the rest of the PV characters. So here's the Sermia, one of the free rage gears that we got. We just put on her. You don't have to go rage. You can go destruction. Just the most damage, or attack. You could just do the most damage you could possibly do. That's the idea of her. Try to get her at least 85 crit chance. If you're going to be using her in KDs, you want to get as close to 100. But that KD's team is super simple, and if things line up, it's really fast. In terms of exclusive equipment, you want to have the extra attack, so that way it can pretty much one-shot Golem. That's the idea of it. It's just you have a quick Golem team. You don't really want to farm Golem, but for the Hero's Path missions, get it done. So here is the Raz, so just some bulk, some effectiveness, so he can land his defense break. And if you have an extra Aureus, you put him on it. I just put him on Adamant Shield, and it was working fine. Afternoon Soak Flame, if you guys did get her, you could try to slot her into some of these teams. She probably wouldn't be too bad in the Golem team, to be completely honest. I don't think you really need it, but it'd probably go great in Golem. The only thing is this isn't going to do as much damage as Daydream Joker, and this is a fantastic PvP character. So if you want to test her out and see anywhere that you'd want to use her, go ahead. You could probably use her in Light Expedition too. You probably use her almost anywhere. Just go around and test her if you did pull her and get a decent build on her. Next up, we have our Mercedes. It's just pure damage. You build these characters slower because you're going to be dual attacking with them, so their speed isn't super important, as they're getting turns without getting turns. Essentially, that's what all of the PvE teams are, is trying to set you up with as many dual attacking characters as possible. Next up, we have our Tamarin. Tamarin, need to upgrade the helmet, but this is overall good enough. As long as she's around like 16,000 HP, you're chilling, and then it's close to 200 speed. That's all you need. Obviously, the artifact doesn't upgrade. If you have an extra potion vial, put it on her. My current only potion vial is on my Death Dealer Ray. Next up, we have our Cigarette, just general free rage set that we got. Brig is just general full bulk because we're using him in everything, meaning that in the expeditions he'll take a ton of damage, so you want to make sure that he has more bulk if you're using him in all the expos. If you do get better gear though, you can obviously put him on counter set. You can do whatever you'd like to do, but overall the stat line's pretty good. I put him on Steadfast Gatekeeper to mitigate the boss damage on him. Next up, our Awana. I just went and got the free gear set from the Chapter 3 story. In Chapter 3 story, you can trade AP in for each of this gear. This is the Chapter 1 through 6 of that. So this gear is fantastic. It fits perfectly on Rowana. If any of these pieces roll really high speed, you could also switch them out for a PvP character. And Rowana gear does not really matter. Just try to get her as bulky as you can. She's just there to sit and keep your team alive. And she does that by doing nothing, just existing. Next up, we have Commander Lorena. This is obviously the damage dealer for the Fire Expo. Terrible gear, but still score like 1,000,000 points on that. So she is super, super good. If you're ever going to use her for Abyss stages or anything, if you see her on one of those, you'll want to put some better gear on her. But she's just holding this gear for now because it does the job. Obviously, once I reforge this, she'll have more crit chance, but you don't have to on your PvE characters. If you're not 100 crit chance, it's not a big deal. The only time it's a big deal is hunts because you only need 85, but as long as you're as close to that 85 as you can for the other things, if you miss a crit and your damage is slightly different in expos or hunts, you're going to be okay. You might fail one run because you miss a crit at the wrong time, but it won't affect you 99% of the time. Next up, Mui. This is just general effectiveness on the Mui for the Wyvern team. Then we have our Furious 181 with the 65 effectiveness. That's all you need. I see he's on a +6 and +9. None of his gear is fully level except the boots and the sword. So you could obviously build a much better Furious than this, but this works. The team I just did, I've been doing the quick battles all week. I don't think I failed, but one maybe. So even with this really crappy gear, super good. Here's our Saria. We are going to be starting to bring her into some of the raid content or the labyrinth content. So this is like the idea, just try to get close to 100 effectiveness, 200 speed with some bulk. That's all you need. You don't need to build around damage. Your damage will come from your damage dealers. But usually with support characters as a new player, you're just trying to get them to survive. It's not about min-maxing them to do extra damage. Yes, once you get better gear later on, you could try to put a little damage on her, put her on crit chance neck or something, but it's not going to make a big difference either way. Loka is like the same idea. I'm on an attack neck right now because I don't have an extra bulk neck. I would like to get an HP neck for her, and I'll get one pretty soon. But nothing's dropped from Goblin yet. Most of these characters, the idea is to try to Goblin gear them as much as possible and save all your other gear for PvP. But for right now, this works. The artifact doesn't really matter. I just put her on this for extra effectiveness. Puts her at 85. That should give us the number needed. And the reason Loka is good and she will be used on your team is she gives a decreased attack, decreased speed, which are both great. When target of ice element, increase the speed of all allies by 2 turns. So whenever you're using her in the water expo, she's giving you speed up, which isn't the greatest thing because if you hit too many times, you get counterattacked. But besides that, she increases the attack of the caster and the ally that has attack except for the caster for 2 turns, cover radius by 30%, and if they are less than 35%, you get an additional 50. So this gives you 80% cover radius bonus on your backline character. The idea with Water Expedition is your back character is going to have 0 combat radius and be like moving at 1% speed. So they will always be below 35. So whenever she's combat readiness pushes them, they're going to be zooming and be able to break out of that and get their turn. So they have a debuff on them until they get their turn. They will not be able to really move or do anything and break out of that debuff. But with this, it allows you to get through that. And her skill 1 has a defense break as well. So I boosted that up to 50%. That's always fantastic defense break in any kind of PV content. Next up, I just threw gear on Vivian. This is a little over geared, but I just had auto equip for her just to test the team, and this is all you need. If you want a 6-star, you can. 6-starring characters is easy, and it'll just make your runs more consistent and faster, honestly, because you'll be getting a bit more damage. But this is the idea. One of the big things, though, is all of your damage dealers for all the different hunts especially your Banshee damage dealers. You want to use Daydream Joker, but you don't have the artifact charms to upgrade 50 Daydream Jokers as a new player. So what I always do is I upgrade Daydream Jokers, and depending on what I'm going to be farming, I just move the artifacts. So normally my Vivian would be on no artifact, and then if I wanted to farm some Banshee, I'll go move my Wyvern characters, Daydream Jokers, down to my Banshee team. So you just utilize those same artifacts, and since these are only PvE characters, it's not going to be a big deal if they're unequipped with an artifact most of the time. It's just remember to switch your artifacts depending on what you're hunting. It is a tiny bit of gold to do that, but it's super worth it because artifact charms are insanely hard to get in this game. Okay, next up's Camilla. This is the last character that we'll go over. So Camilla, the biggest thing is you want a little more effectiveness than I have, but this overall works. Generally, I try to keep her below or like at 180 speed or below. So I would maybe like to speed her up a tiny bit, but just bulk on her. You can keep her 5-star. Same with Loka. Loka's another keep 5-star character. Almost all support characters just keep them 5-star, unless you feel like you have to 6-star them because your gear won't keep you alive. But the idea you want to try to get, or I think it's 85 effectiveness on her. Once you get that number, you'll be good. But this has been working. Like it's not the most consistent, but trying to stretch my gear between all these characters so I can at least show you guys. And then again, I try not to go above 180 speed on her because Dark Expedition, you're able to go in and hit full auto, and she will use her skills in proper rotation. That's the only reason the 180 speed is the Dark Expo. Now, if you're not using her in Dark Expo, you can build her however you want, but it's the same general idea, effectiveness with your attack. And the reason Camilla is good, we've already shown it, but if she has attack buff, you can skill 1 and get an extra hit with whatever your backline character is. So she can flex into almost every team, and she will be used for some of your one-shot teams if you decide to try to set those up later. But that is overall the video for today. So I just wanted to go and show you what all my teams were that I used to farm everything. The next thing we're going to be working on is going to be our Labyrinth teams. So with the Labyrinth teams, some of the characters I was telling you guys to work on is obviously going to be boosting up your Sari a bit. We're going to be boosting up Carrot. I'm going to give you more, but this is just a little bit that you can start working on once the other video's out. You'll probably have to go back and work on a few extra characters. I am going to be utilizing Ran and Shu. So the thing with Raid is it takes a lot of characters because you cannot use the same characters really for like any bosses. It's all specialized teams because you do it once a month. You can get some really good gear out of it. We'll talk about all of it when it comes up, but I'm going to be using Ran on one of the teams. I'm going to be using Blue Shoe on one of the teams. I mean, I have to get her built up. I have to get the Carrot built up. We have Saria's kind of almost ready, and there's going to be a few other characters, but those are just some of the ones I'm working on. You'll see my final team soon, and I'll try to give you replacements kind of like I did today, where I'll talk about other things you could put in there. And most of the characters, whenever I was talking about the damage dealers that you could switch out, just build them like a general damage dealer. So this would be try to get, if you have elemental advantage or whatever boss, it's 85 crit, and then you just try to get damage, so attack and crit damage. Now, if they're HP scaler, you can highlight their skill. If it is going to be an HP scaling character, it'll say it right here. There aren't that many, especially for PvE. So just if you want to try a different character, just make sure you know what they're supposed to be built on. And that's all I got for this video. If you guys have any specific things you want me to cover for the rest of the guide, please let me know. We're pretty much done. I was like debating on even uploading the rest of this because I was like, people are going to be able to figure out their accounts. You guys' accounts by this point should be set up pretty dang well. And you should be able to go in and figure each little thing out that you need to for the upcoming content. But I'll go ahead and at least show what I do, and then we'll wrap it up in 2 more episodes. So been Mature Deity. Thank you for watching and joining me on your Epic 7 journey, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.